I think it's 6:34, and I'm going to call a meeting of the Concord Solar Implementation Task Force to order. We have a quorum in the room, and we are short Gavin.
He's traveling.
He's traveling. That's
Oh,
right.
that's
He
right.
he announced that at the last meeting, so
Right, yeah.
so that's good. So our first order of business this evening is minutes, and we do have one set that Wendy prepared. I'm short on the ones from the 7th. I do have the audio on my phone and I will do it, but I don't have them prepared. So has everyone looked at those minutes? They're pretty brief.
Yeah. Good.
The only note that I will make is I think that Grace's last name,
Yeah, it has a typo. It's one G and not
it's
two.
one G and
Yeah.
not two. So there's a typo.
And I don't know if this Mrs. Heaney that's referenced is correct.
What did you say?
Mrs. Deanie's name,
I don't know.
how it's spelled.
G-U-I-N-E-Y?
So I believe that's correct.
It's good. Okay,
Yeah,
what's in
GUI.
the staff directory, so
Yep,
I'll leave it. It's
yep,
fine.
so that's good. Okay. So can I get a motion on the available minutes, which are from the 14th?
I move that we approve them.
Second. Okay, we'll take a roll call. Steve? Yes. Wendy?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And myself, Dean, yes.
Yes.
Charlie, yes. So
Yes.
they're approved unanimously. So that's,
Dean, before we go, we have to confirm who's taking notes. Charlie, you're
Oh.
up for the next 7 minutes.
well,
I guess-
we're being
I
recorded.
guess I'll
so
just
you
take
can-
it off the recording.
You can use the
Yeah,
recording.
I'm sorry.
It's all, we're all good.
So just don't say anything tonight.
That would have been good on the 7th when we did not have a recording. Okay, so now we're to chair's report. The chair's report, it's only been a week. It's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, I guess. But actually not. There's been a lot going on. So this Monday, I attended the select board meeting and presented our warrant article to the select board. There was a reasonably long discussion about the process of having a warrant article placed on the warrant, but I think it didn't really affect our presentation or us getting on the warrant. So, so that I then turned around and sent the warrant article to the moderator and to the chair of the select board saying, hey, this is our thing. And it was with the small paragraph of description that would go in the warrant. So they have it just as we approved it in our meeting from the 14th, which is with the $9.2 million final number. Okay. On Wednesday, I attended the chair's breakfast.
You need to tell us what kind of reception you got.
Oh, at the select board meeting? I think they were more concerned about process, Phil, than about the actual thing. There was a question about the rate impacts on, and I had to defer that because we're going to work through that between now and town meeting. We'll have a very detailed analysis of rate impacts, and we'll work with the light board. We hope to work with Laura on that, and it's on our agenda tonight. So how we're valuing the energy and how that's all going to work through. So that was a question. They also did ask about the reception that it received at the light board. And I said, the word I think I use is it was warmly received. They didn't take an actual vote, but it was met with some positive feelings. Let's put it that way. I think they'll take it up in detail as they're moving themselves towards town meeting themselves as to whether to support it. I expect we will get support. I'm not really too worried about that, but it was a question that was asked and I did respond. So on Wednesday, I attended the chair's breakfast. At the chair's breakfast, Isabel Bailey, who was in the pollinator support committee, came before me in providing her status. And in her status, she specifically talked about drainage swales and how important they are. And if we can get plantings into drainage swales that support pollinators, that this is helpful. Do not fill them up. Let them do the work that they need to absorb water, but also think about pollinator plantings, to which the chair of the select board, Henry Dane, said, you need to talk to Dean, he'll be giving his status soon. And she specifically mentioned before I even got there, there's a huge swale at CCHS that they would like to work on. They have some sort of team of people who are volunteering to do this kind of work. And when I gave a status report that included talking about the swale at CCHS, she's like, we have a team for that. So we may be able to work something through there.
So I make a comment?
Yes,
I guess this might not come up again. There are also incentive dollars available from the Commonwealth. There's grant money for building pollinator gardens in conjunction with solar array systems.
Oh,
So whether that would ever come to anything for us, I don't know, but it's worth making a note of for
okay,
shade grown
General public.
pollinated.
Yeah.
well,
Do what?
she,
Shade grown pollinated.
yes, so she was very clear that the Division of Natural Resources insists if you're gonna do pollinator plantings, that you get plants that are native to our area. There's a lot of things that are advertised as pollinator plants that pollinators like, but Delia K is not excited about the prospect of people going out and just planting gardens and casting large, seed beds of non-native plants. So the pollinator team is looking to make sure that we follow the recommendations of the Natural Resources Division. Offline, I met with Grace Goggins, who's on the call this evening with Charlie, and she presented us with a survey that she was intending to provide for the students and faculty at the high school. We'll get to that. There's something in the communications and that leads me to communications. We have in our packet an exchange that I went through with the superintendent, who sent me a note because Grace, using the citizen comment in window at the school committee meeting, although the school committee meeting said she was intent on doing this survey that was prepared, and in very short order, the superintendent put that on hold and communicated with me, hey, what's going on? And so you see the exchange that I had with the superintendent on that. And she got back to me after my emails that are in the packet and just said, thank you, this is very helpful for clarifying how things have been going. So whether the survey gets back off the ground or not is not obvious, but hopefully it will, if Grace wants to do it, hopefully she can get it back up.
Was there a stated objection to the survey?
Not really. I mean, you read the email, it didn't really say why, it just, no.
Said no.
No.
The feedback that we provided was, please go through all the normal channels.
Right. Right,
Please go through the liaisons, please go through your advisor, please go through Mrs. Guiney and so forth. And I believe Grace did all of those things in one way or another.
right. So
I just spoke to Dr. Hunter today. Do you guys want to hear what she said to me?
You want to
Sure.
wait? Look at that?
sure, I'll use my discretion. Go ahead, Grace. If you want to give us an update, that's great.
So I spoke to her today at the sustainability committee meeting for the schools, and her sentiment was that everything is moving too fast for her, and she wants to really take a look at the survey, and she thinks that this should all be going through her and through the school committee if we want to do this, and it has to be more official because doing a survey like this with an outside political committee like ours is that needs to go through her and be a part of and she needs to really be in the loop for something like that. So I wasn't aware of all those channels, but yeah, that's what she told me.
Yeah, you bumped up against something, so it's fine. We feel for you. What can I say? Thank you for your efforts. I'm sure things are gonna shake out in a positive way, so.
Sounds like student newspapers should be going through
Well,
the superintendent too.
I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but I don't want to get involved in those sorts of things. So finally, in my chair's remarks, we just don't have any scheduled meetings after this one. So we need to establish can we just say that we're gonna stay on our first and third Thursday of each month? Is everybody happy with that?
March 1st.
Okay, so that will be how, the next time there's an agenda that goes out, it'll show our next set of meetings and what the dates are, so we'll know. And I will make sure to send, because we haven't done this in the past, but I'll make sure as we enter the new year that I send all the dates to the meetings email address, so they at least put our meeting on the calendar, even if there isn't a posted agenda yet. People will be able to say, oh, solar task force is coming up, so they'll be able to know what's going on. Just for our kind of like back our minds, keeping us thinking about this, the finance committee will be holding their hearings on the 7th, 19th, and 21st of March. And it's not obvious where our article will go. It is likely to go on the 21st, on the same night that the light plant and all the other funds will be taken up. So yeah, so that's probably where we'll go, but we may need to be ready for the 7th, so we need to work through, a lot of our detail.
What date was that again that you're thinking?
I'm thinking it's 3/21. But that will shake out as the finance committee. Well, the first thing that'll happen is the select board will establish the order of the articles on the warrant. And then the finance committee will say, okay, these all have to do with money, which ours does. So we'll take all of these and they'll figure out where they'll go. And that should come out within the next 3 weeks or so.
You said 3/21?
3/21, March
Wow.
21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it be prudent for us to have some informal discussions with at least the chair, but possibly other members of the finance committee, since we have to have their support?
Well, okay, so kind of left these off the chair's remarks, but I made some calls that didn't result in anything. I emailed the chair of the finance committee and said, if you need us in front of you before our article, and they close out the warrant and everything's like, locked down, I'm available. And he said they were having the 250th committee, who's also asking for money. They were having them in, but since we are actually a bond authorization and it's revenue supported, he said, we'll have you in January. So I already communicated with him. I also communicated with the chair of the CAC, Brad Hubbard Nelson, and said, because he had an agenda that included, talking about support for various articles. And I said, well, ours is one that you would want to certainly consider supporting. When he got back to me on that, and I said, well, I can come in and talk to the CAC. They get an update from Gavin all the time, but I said, I can come in, we can do a presentation, dog and pony show about our article. And he said, don't worry about it. The only things we're really looking to talk about in this meeting are ones that we're actually sponsoring.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just going through the warrant articles and, oh, we need to support this, we need to support that. It was just the ones they were sponsoring. So I did do some of that outreach, Phil, but didn't result in any to-dos on my part yet. So yeah, there you go. One other outreach that I did in the interim was to the town engineer to see if there was any pushback against the drainage swale. He forwarded it to the person in charge of basically stormwater design and stormwater management items. And I did get a nice detailed response, and it was all very reasonable. It was, hey, look at the drip edge. You don't want to get scouring on very heavy rainstorms, so you want to maybe do something like gravel lines of gravel or something, something along the drip edge so that it's not ruining stuff. And then creating sediment driving to the center of the swale and blah, blah, blah. So, he was very detailed about it, but none of it sounded like, no, you can't do this. It was just, we need to make sure that the functionality of the swale is maintained.
And we've got more work to do with him.
And we got more to do. We got more to do.
But I mean, we have more work to do with him on this topic.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
not said yet.
This is not,
He's
it's
not
not,
said we're good.
it's not, he hasn't said we're good, but he has said these are the things that need to be kind of attended to. And
allow the water to flow.
Yeah, well, water is always your enemy. It's just, you want to hold.
That's your school too?
Oh, we're gonna need to deal with it at the drainage and at the landfill, the same thing.
Yeah.
You're creating
Oh, yeah.
a pervious surface that's moving water faster than the ground.
That it would normally hit the ground, so it's, it's just something you gotta work on, but I think that, as I said, I think at the drip edge, if you have like a gravel spot that it just falls into it, like a splash zone, we'll call it, I think we should be fine. So, I think I'm spent on the chair's report for this meeting. It's been actually a very busy week. Like,
Okay, 15 minutes,
what's that?
okay.
Are we on time? I gotta keep to the picture here. Oh, we're not in bad shape. Okay. So, we're a little ahead, but that's fine. I'm happy to be ahead. And the BD is our next brief update. In the packet, I just put one page of Wendy. Wendy produced a multi-tab spreadsheet, which is an update on the BD numbers.
Just on the screen.
Sure, we can put that on the screen. Let me see. I gotta join the meeting. It's gonna take me a minute here, so one sec.
So while you're doing
Yeah.
that, Dean, I'll just remind what I did. So this is the same NREL model that we looked at a couple months ago. Seems like a couple months ago for BD, right? And what we did was we updated the model to reflect the 2024 rates.
But is that using SAM?
Yes, it's
Okay,
still
yeah.
using SAM. Yeah, so the SAM model
Okay.
updated for those rates. And so really what this just summarizes, and it also, remember, includes that 25.5% discount from the IRA. So what's highlighted on this table was the net present value, which is typically how you're gonna look at a project to see if it's profitable or at least breaks even. And so using that and there's two versions here. There's something called year zero, which just means that
It's on the screen now, so.
Oh, okay, so in the model, the version 1 is the out of the box model output that we looked at before, and I'm just commenting that the difference here is that the model assumes the incentive is received at the beginning of the project, which is not likely what we're gonna have.
No,
We're
it's-
likely to see it 2 years later.
Right.
So, but out of the box is what version 1 is out of the NREL model. The net present value is positive, it's 105,000, great. Keep in mind that the IRA credit is 122,000 in this model. I don't know if that's in the summary, but it's roughly that amount. So that's partly why, well, it contributes to the net present value being positive.
Right.
The version 2 is a version that says, assume that you didn't get that 25.5% discount on year 0, but instead you received it in year 2. But because you hadn't gotten that money, you have to fund whole projects, so it assumes a larger amount of debt. So what's in yellow is it's the full, you would bond the full debt in this version. Now, realistically, I don't think that that's a realistic model, like for BD. So
What isn't to what?
so for BD, so version 1 here assumes that you're gonna get that 25.5%.
Right up front. You're gonna
Right
stick
up
it off the
front, which
top.
we know we're not gonna do.
Right,
But this version 2, again, using that NREL model, just says, assume there isn't a discount. And so when you model it, you have to pay, it's 100% of the debt is through a bond. But then I tweaked the cash flow and said, pretend you get that 25% discount in year 2. So that the net present value of that model is 110,000. You know, the details here, devil's in the detail, in the ballpark around 100,000.
Right, about
So
100,000.
it's palatable. I think we're in a position where we can start sharing this with BD because I understand that there was some interest in understanding sort of the value of the model.
I met with Carrie for about 45 minutes
Okay.
this week, and one of the things that was discussed was the BD there. She has a tremendous amount of interest in moving forward. I did kind of
Yeah.
dampen her enthusiasm by saying you need to work on the roof before you can get
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
So it is a couple of years out probably.
Yeah.
And but I think she's looking to find ways to just cut their electric bill. I mean, really, they're
Yeah,
just trying
no,
to
I
work on their operating,
Yeah.
budget, which is very fine.
isn't the big number here is the 36,000, right? This is their.
That's
Assuming they
the big one.
funded, I think the model was that they expressed to me was least when Anna was here, that they would fund it themselves.
I don't know where that money comes
Well,
from.
okay, but I guess.
Just saying.
No, I'm just saying what they said, that they would fund it themselves, and that they, what they really wanted to understand was, were they to do that?
Yeah.
What would they be able to save per year in their
Yeah,
energy?
no, and that's that
And that's the
36.
the big number there is 36,000.
So it's actually,
Wait, hold on.
okay,
Comment I wanted to make about the 36,000 is, that's in the realm of the numbers that we've always presented to them. It's not far off. I think it's a little bit higher because we went to the bigger panels, but shouldn't be any surprises.
so the possibly very good news is that in the event that they were to actually self-fund and not take out bond and have to pay back bond, their net savings for the system year one would be higher than 36,000, because these models assume that they're paying
They're paying
debt
debt,
down.
yeah.
they're paying
This
debt down.
model is-
Oh, wait, that model, that the 36,000 has debt in it.
Debt
Yeah,
service.
debt
Yeah.
service.
You gotta get the debt, out of there.
Well, so I
Because
guess.
they're trying to make, what I'm trying to tell you is they're trying to make a decision.
Yeah.
Based on their own rules about what's important to them financially, and I think all of these numbers are good to have.
Yeah.
They're all good to have, but I think one thing they need to understand is what is the impact, if they self-fund, what's gonna impact gonna be annually,
They're operating.
on their operating expense. So
What is the?
would that be like 40,000? Would it go up a bunch, or?
What's the debt service component within that?
Well, if you just you're just assuming that it's fully funded.
But I think that we can redo them,
So, yeah, we do.
Just redo them.
Zero.
redo them and just,
Yeah.
and just slip that in there.
Just
And,
just for comparison.
Yeah, just for comparison. So, and then it's all good. It's all good stuff to know.
Yeah.
What is the assumed interest rate?
4%? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what is the assumed appreciation of the cost of electricity? If you have to purchase it.
So this model doesn't have to do that. It's really saying, what is the volume? Based on a certain volume, what are your current rates? And then it mimics sort of what is the solar net energy consumption less the solar. And so it's taking that difference and saying that that's a savings to the BD.
But I think what Phil's question is if you go out 10 years, you're still gonna be generating those kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
What's the value? What's the offset value? Is energy cost increasing? And I do think the model has ways to
Yeah.
identify what the inflation rate of energy would be. And you can I think, did we plug in like a
Yeah, I thought we had that number in there.
0.5% a year? Something like that?
Unfortunately, it's gonna be the same.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
their bill is going up and their savings is gonna go up the same line because they're based on the same number, right?
Right.
So if you say you're saving, 36 as a percentage of 189, then it's gonna remain the same
Same.
over time,
Yep.
right? So you can play it out. The number might be different, but the relationship is gonna remain the same.
So,
Yeah.
so again, for now, I think what we're trying to do is get in the ballpark of some decent numbers.
Yeah.
That they can use to decide whether they want to pursue this or not.
Yeah.
If they want to pursue this, they're gonna want to get the pencils sharpened up and they're gonna want to get more precise, and then we can help them in a different way at that point. But I think all we need to do is give them, a good first level approximation of what this looks like, so that they can take it to their
Yeah, I mean, we can
stakeholders.
take the debt out, but they just have to come to the table with 480 grand. That's a
Well,
lot of money.
these are the things they want to know. They want to know
Yeah.
what it would cost them to build it. They want to know and that would be what they would have to self-fund. They would want to know what the cost would be, if they had to borrow the money. These are all good things to know.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the model has in it, which is a switchable option, is calculate how much debt I should take out that I can cover with my energy savings.
Savings,
Yeah, that I'll just be able to cover that with my energy savings, and that would, that would just tell you how much debt you have to fund the rest, but you can take that out and you're even up because your energy is covering your debt.
Now that explains something that is puzzling. The two bottom lines never show 10 and 16 years
Payback.
are not very spectacular. And yet there's nothing about the BD center that doesn't look like a reasonable cost opportunity. What's the answer? It's not intuitive.
Well, keep in mind, this model assumes debt.
Yeah.
So the payback, you keep this, there's a 15-year loan embedded in this model.
I'm assuming
Right,
that,
so that's probably why you're getting.
but
that
4% is not a very high interest rate either.
loan. So,
So why is it not more attractive in terms of the numbers?
so in the cash flow, so there's also a 2.5% inflation. So, and it's not just 4%, it's a 6.6%
Ah,
nominal rate, so it's those two numbers, if you multiply them to each other, you get 6.6%, so that's sort of your. I think this, just with interest.
So,
But I
So-
think, so I guess the point is that, I guess, Charlie, maybe we could meet offline and sort of.
Yeah.
put the specific
We-
information.
That's right, we wanna get,
Conveyed back to them.
Sit
we
down.
wanna
whatever.
prepare for a meeting so they can feel good
Yeah.
about sense that they get out of this.
Yeah.
We don't wanna make the story look good. What we wanna do is help them understand it.
So,
Meeting offline is a good idea.
yeah, let's just meet offline, and we can just agree what they need to see, and we can just happy it up.
Can I ask just one question on the modeling? What are we assuming the life of a solar installation is? So that when you run up against 15 or 16-year payback, are we saying the panels are good for 20 years and therefore they're gonna be replaced at 20, or the inverters need to be replaced at 10, or what's the thought process on you're gonna hit a threshold of end of life?
we've been modeling that inverters have to be replaced at 10, and we've been putting a small amount of money aside in each cycle
Okay,
to be ready for those 10-year intervals.
right,
So that's a piece of the way it's done. And the other thing that we've done is we've stretched out the life because the panel manufacturers say they can go 30. And
okay,
so,
no,
okay,
it was just the brackets, the 10 years for
Yeah.
inverters and 30 for panels.
25
All
might
of
be
these-
very conservative at this point, be 25.
The committee as a whole, glad you asked that question,
Yeah.
the committee as a whole needs to agree on all, and make sure we
Yeah.
agree on all of these input parameters.
Yeah.
So that it's kind of public and,
Well, and
Right.
so like, there's just, you share information, great, here's what we know.
Right.
Here's the 5 caveat points we want.
right, yeah,
So if you're planning this out.
Right,
in the
yeah,
future,
all
that's
the
yeah,
input variables, we need to
the
kind of
salesmanship. type
spend some
stuff,
time
yeah.
going over those.
and the large difference between the simple payback and discounted payback, could you just say a word or two as to what that causes,
Well, I'm
you've
Not
got
sure I'm
two,
clear.
you've got two numbers here, 10 years and 16 years. What drives the difference?
one's a discounted payback. I'll have to get more detail on the difference, because I can't. I don't know specific
So,
ones.
also taking a step back on some of this stuff, and this isn't really part of the BE topic.
Yeah.
But it's something that I wanted to comment on tonight. I think that when I think about the report, the final report, I think about the fact that, again, thinking about your question, thinking about, well, life of panels, life of inverters, like, whatever the things are that are material to this model. IRR, is it IRR? What's the thing?
Yeah.
The problem, not IRR, the,
Net present value?
no, the discussion we're gonna have with Laura tonight about.
Oh, about how to
Energy.
value the
Yeah,
energy.
how to value the energy, but the pieces of value in the energy. I think we're gonna need to
Capacity
have
transmission.
a pair, yeah,
Yeah.
capacity and transmission, that's of course I was looking for. We're gonna have to, I think we're gonna have a paragraph on each that basically says,
Yeah.
this is what we're using, this is why we're using this. And then we need to, again, we have that documentation in front of us. We agree to it, and it should be written in a way that gets the jargon out of there. And that enables people to understand, so that all of a sudden the mystique and the voodoo is gone out of this, and people can say, yeah, okay, I get that, that makes sense. Is that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
Actually,
of-
all of these have to be.
One of the things that I was thinking about is there may be some well-crafted visuals, charts and other things that can graphically over time express some of these concepts to make them a little easier to understand. So whether it's return on value, or whether, here's your return on investment, but now at 10 years, you're gonna take a hit. Yeah, 10 years, you're gonna take another hit, whatever. Just so that you can graphically see the lifespan of the entity that we're creating.
but it's also gonna have to be solid in the report as
Yeah,
written
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it's gotta be a good backup. You can't just go with the graphic and say, it's
Yeah,
not pretty,
exactly.
it looks like it works.
And what's our authority on terms of the increasing cost of electricity? I'm sure that's been heavily studied.
Well, we're gonna try to lean on Laura and the light plant for their expertise.
Laura knows a
in-
lot about that.
Yeah.
We
So,
know that,
yeah.
right? Right, Laura?
All right. Are we pretty good with the BD as far as?
We're good. We're gonna go
You
offline
guys
and we'll
can go
figure out how we, and I guess. Is it okay for us to go offline and figure out what we wanna do and then just simply go meet with the BD people and get kind of
Sure.
a first
I don't
step going?
see- I don't
Because
see.
we wanna know what the questions are, because we're gonna have to go back and do another iteration
I don't-
and so forth.
I don't have any problem with you going and
Okay,
meeting.
good.
It's fine. It's all good. Okay, our next item on the agenda is how are we valuing energy that the system is producing? And I'll start with a simple statement and then we're gonna have to go to the complex. Our simple understanding is that recs cost a certain amount, that there's a certain value to a rec. Now that over time may change. Recs may become more valuable or less valuable. If there's a lot of solar energy or wind energy, wind farms come in, there may be, recs may be less valuable. But for now, we're considering a rec to be 2.5 cents. The other piece of the puzzle that I've been considering a relatively stable number is what's the value of the energy that you're producing? Because we have to buy energy as a purchasing authority. The light plant is buying energy in varying kinds of contracts, different levels of demand responsibility, dispatch responsibility, et cetera, and at different prices. And so what should we be valuing the raw energy? We've been kind of using a thumbnail number of 6 cents. And beyond that, now you're getting into the weeds. Now you're getting into is the solar energy that we're producing happening at a time that helps us to reduce transmission capacity measurements that the ISO imposes on us? And if it does, then we can get a little more value out of it. But if it doesn't, or if we pair it with a battery, for example, then the whole system might be much more helpful because we can dispatch the battery during moments when it does produce real value. So that's where we need your help, Laura, is how do we get that extra little smidge of value out of this, if there is any? If there isn't, and we're just stuck at 8.5 cents, then that's what we'll use. But the models don't work. It's not a particularly great financial picture if you're just using raw 8.5 cents.
It'd be helpful to know how we get to these numbers too.
Yeah.
How do we get to, did you say 6 cents?
6 and
So
2.5.
how do we get to 6? Is it an average?
Well,
Is it taking only solar as an example? How do we get to that?
That's
Boom,
a
boom,
very-
boom.
that's
We're
a very
going
good
through all these layers and explaining, what the derivation is of them.
Right.
wouldn't you use the rate in which what CMLP pays that on an annual basis? That rate that it's coming in and what we're generating internally, wouldn't that align to be the same number of use? I know that
It's open
they
to
use
dispute,
various
it's open
different-
to discussion.
Yeah, and then the rec, I know varies every year based on, demand and
Sure.
the market, right? So that you're pegging a market for analysis, but there's some variation. And what's the variation over time that the market is presented so that people can determine whether that number is a safe number or you want to be more conservative because the market might go in the opposite direction. So there may be some brackets on the numbers.
Right. So, across all energy purchases for all categories of charges that come from the ISO in what we'll call the energy bucket of the light plant, the number is like 19 cents all in.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that, Laura? That was in your rate hearing the other day, that your basic average cost of energy is like 19.8 cents.
So it's 15 something.
No, it's more like 13.3.
13.3. Okay.
And that, and as you said, that includes commodity, it includes transmission, it includes capacity. It includes fixed charges, basically everything that rolls into the power supply portion of the cost is in that 13.3 cents.
So 13.3 is your all-in number. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're trying to have you help us because we don't know how we have a lot of sophisticated capacity to model this. But if we don't have a valuation, we don't know how to value like these SAM models are generating really good data in terms of energy produced and when the energy is produced. The question is, what's the value of that at the moment that it's produced? And that's where we're sort of we need help from the light plant. We don't want to put out bad data. We don't want to just be too rosy, but at the same time, we don't want to be too dour either.
Now, am I correct in thinking that what we're wanting is to know what the value of capacity is in that stack, what the value of transmission is in the stack?
Well, we haven't moved on from those first two numbers. The first number was 2.5 for a rec, and the second number was, it's just a thumbnail number. 6
Well,
cents
right, but the
per
13,
kilowatt.
we got to 13 cents pretty quickly. Now, the 13 cents is a stack of numbers.
It is a stack.
So we want to get into that stack, each level of that stack, rather than simply try to buy into what somebody says is the big number.
So the stack, unfortunately, the stack is, some of the numbers are assessed as big bulk charges each month. It's a bulk charge, and yeah, you can spread that across every kilowatt that you had to buy. But that's just a bulk charge. So it goes into the number and then you spread it. It's not really assessed at the kilowatt hour level. So your number for the RNS Schedule 9 stuff, the number for capacity.
It's okay that it goes in for bulk, but unless you just want to leave it at the higher level, you kind of gotta
Somehow we have
gotta try to break it out, spread it and divide it and chop it up and be able to say, what this is, because I think I may be wrong, but I think this is what people have questions about. Well, how much of the, you got transmission? You're avoiding the transmission charges. Well, what are the transmission charges? Well, we don't want to answer, well, they're all rolled into this bulk number. Right?
But if that's the answer, then
Well, if that's the answer, then that's the answer, but if you can come up with something, if there's a way to come up with something that gives a little bit better articulation to it, maybe we would want to do that.
So I think the way
I don't know. I don't know.
So the way, I think the way to think about it is, if we can shave just a little bit off some of those bulk numbers, we can allocate that value to the energy we're producing. Even if it's a small amount, if we shave a little bit off those bulk numbers, then the amount that we shave can be allocated to the energy we're producing. Otherwise, those numbers are going to be the same number. If you're producing energy at a time when the overall demand is relatively low, you're not going to move the needle on capacity number. You're not going to move the needle on the transmission number because you're producing it at a time when the grid isn't strained. So those are the numbers. Those numbers are charged based on the strain of the ISO. So.
In real simple terms, if we produce some kilowatts and it saves the light plant from buying those kilowatts, the two numbers don't cancel each other out, right? You can't say that we're producing at 13.3 cents because we're saving them from buying it at 13.3 cents.
No.
They have to buy other things, and some of the energy that cost or savings that we make is only saving some of their cost out of that 13.3.
Right.
And that's the energy piece that you're trying to get to. There's a bunch of other components that
Transmission costs won't
our
change.
costs, our savings will not necessarily affect unless there are huge savings, like transmission and capacity.
Well, our savings won't affect unless we are producing the energy at a time when
Yes.
those are being measured and charged to us.
Yes, yeah.
So, Laura, can you help us? We're a
Right,
bunch of
yeah.
people wandering around in the wilderness who don't, this isn't our expertise.
Yeah.
So first of all, let me just make a distinction between, the first question was, what is your all-in power cost? And I said 13.2 cents or 3 or whatever. I don't remember the exact number, but that's roughly what it is. That is our power cost expected for 2024. When we're modeling solar and we expect to get value out of this project for 20 or 30 years, it's a different matter altogether. What the price is in 2024 is not the price for the next 20 to 30 years.
Right.
The challenge in the electric markets is, unlike natural gas, crude oil, and some wheat, a bunch of other, commodities, which have robust forward markets. Electricity does not. It is not very liquidly traded, and we don't have a lot of visibility. We have some visibility based on bilateral transactions for about the next 5 years, and then we go into the dark. So you kind of have to switch from a market view when you get into the longer dated tenors to something more of what would it cost to build this? Because you got to kind of believe the market has to have a clearing price that can build the capacity necessary, right, to meet the need. So you have to use, I think, a number of strategies to try to get at a 20 or 30-year number. It's not quite so simple as just looking up, the NYMEX closes and saying, okay, here's what other people are buying and selling for.
Now, the numbers we just saw, did they in fact include the purchase and use of batteries, or was it assumed that we didn't?
So let's make a distinction between the way the BD was modeled and the way we're modeling the larger arrays that the light plant will run. The BD is anticipated to be privately run by the BD to offset buying electricity from the light plant. So they're doing it behind the meter, and they are offsetting against the way the light plant charges them. So we have a better view of that, a little bit better view of that. And so it's a different way of modeling. It's not like we're trying to anticipate, wind farms showing up off Martha's Vineyard. It's just a different exercise, because we're anticipating offsetting some costs that are part of the operating budget of the BD to purchase energy from the light plant. Whereas if you're building it as the light plant, you're trying to offset the costs of purchasing it from the grid or from other suppliers out on the wider grid. So it's a very different.
Well, but the BD is kind of irrelevant to this.
It is, but I was just trying to
So
explain, because
I
Bill
just would put that up.
Bill was asking
put that
a question
aside.
that is not
So
relevant to the.
one way we might be able to simplify some of this is to go back to where we were with the CMS situation. With CMS.
Right.
We agreed that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, we agreed that it was 6 cents for the energy, and it was 2.5 for the RECs, and it was 8.5 total. And that was that was the valuing number, I believe, we used in the model for the CMS spreadsheet process. Now,
Charlie, I think it was 11 cents, because I do
That was
believe.
11
was,
cents.
because
There was
two and a
extra-
half and- well,
There was
what
some-
were the other pieces?
2.5 cents for that.
For
Laura,
some
why don't you
peak
speak to
shaving,
it?
that's a peak shaving. from the
Okay,
battery.
so then the other pieces are. Yeah, well, we did have an 8 cent number in there, then we had some other stuff in there, so. What we need to figure out is how, this is what you've been saying,
Yeah.
we need to figure out. What we add on to the 6 cents plus the 2.5 cents to get to
Or
whatever the number is.
before we start at the 8.5 cents, I want to just sort of check back and say, do we want to use the same logic that we started with at CMS, which was 6 and 2.5? And is that good enough? Or should we revise it and be more sophisticated, Laura? That's the.
Well, I'd like to mention a conversation I had with one of our board members. He had asked me to walk him through how we were valuing solar. So I went through the middle school model with him, just like I did with Wendy.
Yep.
The avoided costs and the 6 cents and the 2.5. And he's someone who's works in the industry, so he knows quite a bit, about.
John Bolton,
Yeah, John Dalton, exactly. And he expressed to me concern that we would continue to use the 6 cents for incremental solar on the CMLP system, because he's pointing out a sort of larger economic phenomenon, which is the more solar you add to the system, the less valuable it is. And the reason that is because it becomes more and more challenging to integrate it into the grid. And so you have to do things like buy batteries or, other,
Love your cat.
purchases and sales, to be able to do it. And so that was his input. I mean, that's not something that we've discussed with you in the past, but, he has a point. If you look at what's going on in California, they used to talk about the duck curve like this. Well, I saw a graphic recently, which I could share with you all if you'd like. And rather than a duck curve, they now have a canyon. It actually looks like this in California, from
Wow.
like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And so it will be more of an issue the more solar we put, both on the CMLP system and on the wider grid. We are going to have to find some way to move the energy from when it's produced when the sun is shining to when people want it.
Does the approach or the thinking about, the value change over time then? Or I think we're really looking at a snapshot of what we can expect with this installation or with that installation, rather than trying to understand the dynamics of the whole situation going forward. Or am I
No, I think that's right.
wrong about that?
But you might get to a point where you say, okay, we used 6 cents for the middle school, but if we're going to add another megawatt or 2 megawatts or 5 megawatts to the system, we have to value it at a lower value because it's going to cost us more to basically take that energy in and shape it to when we need it.
Yeah, that's okay. If we can do that, we can do that.
But let's back into that conversation. Would proposals that include storage as part of the proposal as an integrated system sort of mitigate this degraded value of the solar, because you're putting up a system that includes management and deferral of the energy to other dispatch moments?
Absolutely.
Mitigating within the project.
We're within the project, like the project we're currently proposed, it's on the warrant, includes quite a bit of solar, it's quite a bit of solar. It's 2.44 megawatts, but it also includes one battery.
And it
Maybe we
includes
should
the dispatch, the value of the dispatch.
There's value in the dispatch. It's built into this project as part of the whole value of the project. So we do need to come up with ways of presenting that is probably not that helpful to disaggregate everything.
Yeah.
I don't want us to get down to, this is how much value the solar has, but then the battery brings this other value and we're disaggregating it and showing such detail. I think we need to try to come up with a overall value.
Which has been our thinking right along.
It has.
There's a consideration that at town meeting may turn out to be important. Somebody's gonna want to cut the cost of the project, obviously, always. And so do we need to show that the cost eventually to the taxpayer with the battery is more advantageous than without? And to do that, do we have to, in fact, have two sets of numbers, one with and one without?
Well, what I would suggest there is that if you were to rank the value of the components, the battery would be at the absolute top of the list.
Yes.
The battery would be able to generate value without having any solar at all. It would be able to generate value by doing peak shaving and keeping the light plant from having to purchase at the most inopportune moments.
And how do we communicate that is the question I'm raising.
Well, but
That one sentence is fine.
there's also a thought that, whatever solar we do, we have to do it responsibly.
Right.
And it relates to the maintaining the system, and that there is
Right.
risk created when we add solar, we're creating risk, and we have to mitigate it in a stepped process for every single project.
Right.
And without that, it causes more issues for the light plant and the ratepayers.
Right,
And therefore, anybody that is looking at a, significant solar contribution to the system should be required to mitigate it, right? And not to do that actually is a detriment to everybody, the town, the ratepayers and such, because of potential effects that unknown effects and charges and other things that may be incurred, which will then decrease the value of any solar you're trying to add.
We're trying to do no harm to the solar we
Yeah,
add.
yeah, good Boy Scouts
So,
here, yeah.
so we do no
No,
harm.
more like a
We are adding-
Hippocratic
we are adding-
solar.
We are adding
Yeah.
pre-mitigated,
No, we're-
pre-mitigated
Yeah.
product.
Yes.
We're taking care of it.
Well, right, well,
All right, we're a little bit off the
Yeah.
valuation.
But I think
question.
this is good though.
It is
But
good,
it's
but
It's
we're.
good. So we don't want to disaggregate this stuff. We want to
Yeah.
keep these components together and look at the P&Ls that way.
Right.
Which
but-
means it's different than what we did with
Right.
CMS,
So-
because CMS didn't sound that good.
Well, CMS rolled them up. CMS did roll them
I
up.
think when
But the-
Brian did the presentation, it was all rolled up.
Right.
It was
But the
all.
eleven, yeah, it's on the ratepayer, but the 11 cents was, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, that other 2.5% was peak shaving without the battery. That was pure solar. Right?
Correct.
So you were able to get some level of
Right.
peak reductions because the solar was producing at very
Times of need.
important times.
Yeah.
Some.
Well- Primarily because we made an assumption that in July and August, the peak would happen from 3 to 4. Now, I do believe, we already have seen the peak in New England shifting later and later. So if the peak moves from between 3 and 4 to between 5 and 6, or 6 and 7, that's really
Right.
gonna bring down
But
that.
then your
peak
value
savings.
is-
Then you can't get it
You
anymore.
can't get that
Yeah.
value anymore.
It's very tenuous, I would say.
And if you can't get that value, you don't get either capacity or transmission.
So
Is that right?
you don't,
You know,
you
So
don't
it
get
it
it.
all has to do with the window.
and the battery extends the window.
So, Laura, you and I had an exchange about how transmission is valued, and you gave a nice description of what's called your RNS Schedule 9 tariff on how it's calculated and everything. And I just want to clarify because I had a conversation with someone who I thought was pretty knowledgeable and had a different thought about how it's calculated. And so I just want to clarify. The window that the monthly RNS charges are levied in is determined by the grid itself, it's not like a demand charge on our max demand for the light plant against the grid. It's determined by the moment when the grid is at its highest, throughput in that month.
We
Is that-
refer to that as a coincident peak, and you're absolutely right, Dean. So if, regardless of when CMLP peaks, they're gonna look at when Eversource peaked in our
Okay.
area. Okay, and if that
Okay.
was between 6 and 7, they look
Right,
at what CMLP
regardless
was
of what we do.
using between
Right.
6 and 7,
Yeah,
Right.
which may not be the max we used all day, right? But it only
Okay.
matters during that window.
And that's-
It's what
and that's-
we're doing when Eversource is.
it's what we're doing
peaking.
when Eversource is peaking. When they're the most stressed, that's when they're gonna take our number and attribute our amount, allocate our amount and
Right.
charge us
Yes,
for using at that
Yeah.
time.
So can we try to agree that we're gonna try to get that window sorted out and we're gonna try to get right? We're gonna
Yes.
try to figure out, okay, is it gonna be 3 to 4? Is it 4 to 5? What is we're gonna have to get to something to get those extra cents if we wanna put them in the model.
So Laura and Wendy and I had an email exchange offline, where Laura put together the 12 monthly hour windows for each month. When's the hour that Eversource ends up, charging us for our RNS transmission charges? And could we use those hours, Laura, or you're saying they may be shifting? I mean, can we use those for now as?
yeah, I mean, for the next year or two, I'm really comfortable using those, but if we get out, 5, 10, 20 years, it's
May
very.
not, we
I
may.
mean,
So this is the John Bolton comment, isn't it? That this is dynamic and you don't wanna be stuck with something that we think is true today that isn't true at all, in year 12 or 15 or whatever.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, right now, batteries appear to make more money than solar alone installations.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems to me the way we get around a lot of this problematic stuff is by pairing the solar with
Yeah.
batteries or building just standalone batteries. But what I would say about that is, to the extent we're not causing local congestion on the CMLP distribution network, it might make more sense, rather than pairing each and every smaller solar installation with its own battery, to build a bigger battery, say at the substation or somewhere else on the CMLP system, that could manage all these solar, because building a bigger battery is much, on a per kW basis, costs a lot less than putting in a bunch of these little batteries.
Now, do you consider a 4 MWh battery a little battery? I'm just trying to think what size battery you'd call it little.
So the one at the middle school is gonna be 2 megawatts, 4 MWh. I'm calling a bigger battery, like on the CMLP system, probably something more like 5 megawatts. 10
Okay.
megawatt
Which is
hours,
what we had a
5
chance to
megawatts,
do, and then
15
we knocked it
megawatt hours.
out. Right?
Yes, so we have hit 7:30, and I have
Oh, Tracy's here.
Tracy's here. Now, the agenda actually says CCHS will start at 7:40. But I did have an agreement with Tracy Morano, who's the chair of the regional district committee, that we would pause what we're talking about and talk about the process steps and the engagement with the school committee and how we, possibly can move forward. And Tracy, I did send a copy of the meeting packet to you, so you should have a copy of the proposal for how we can work together. And that's something we wanted to talk about as a committee. And then once we've had a conversation about what we think, I'll be happy to bring you in. I have discretion. You don't have to wait till the end of a meeting. We'll bring you in and you can comment.
Do you wanna, I mean, do we?
Dean, did you say that? Did you send that today?
I did.
You want
Okay.
Laura to stick around for this?
Well, what else did we? I just don't know if we're finished talking to Laura, how we're gonna follow up. Let's
So-
You can finish,
Very fine.
Dean. I can wait till 7:40, no problem.
Oh,
Like, if you-
okay.
I
Well,
can wait, totally
Yeah,
fine.
we're close to having to skip over the landfill. So I just don't know how we close out for tonight on the energy valuation question. One of the things I think, Laura, that we can produce is we can produce the hourlies from the energy model that we have. So that's something we can do, I believe. And so if we take your 12 hourlies that you provided in the email and look at those little windows, we can see if we're producing anything or what we're producing. Like, that's something we have that data. We have.
Obviously, those numbers are affected by what percentage of battery power do we provide for each battery size. There'll be.
We're gonna try to start valuing the solar energy value, and the battery would be a completely separate calculation.
It sounds like we are moving toward a much slimmer set of numbers for the solar. And putting more of it over on the battery where it really happens. I don't know if I'm hearing that or not, but we've talked about this before.
We're gonna have to
It
look
seems
at
that
how they map and see what happens.
Most of it is attributed really to, well, other than the raw energy number and the RECs, the rest of it is really attributable more to the battery than to.
Well, we'll have to see. There's only.
But
we only have to
that's the
find 12
that's the
numbers.
investigation. That's
Yeah.
what we're gonna look for.
We're gonna look for 12 numbers, the monthly hours for January through December. What hour is it? And then we look in the model and say, in those months, what did it produce? I know that the SAM model produces that hourly data.
But then Laura needs to decide, or the CMLP needs to decide how they're gonna deal with the issue of the changing windows over time.
Right.
So I mean, I have no idea what they would want to do with that, but
No, we don't. That's,
so all we can do is do the boom.
here's what we have now.
Here's what we have now, and somebody's gonna have to give us
But given that.
some benefit of the doubt on the rest of the years.
So we're actually not, at least at the internals of the way the model works, we are not producing a series of numbers that are dependent on anything else other than the degradation of the panel
No,
and the energy that it
yeah,
produced.
it's a static kind of,
The static thing.
Static
So
thing.
while the market itself may be extremely dynamic, the model that we have says, this is how many kilowatts you're gonna get, or kilowatt hours you're gonna get in this hour, in 10 years, in 20 years.
well, what I'm
Because
saying
we-
is, you have to take something out of a dynamic environment. And decide what the number is that you want to put into the static model. Because the model is static, it doesn't say, oh, you know.
The static piece is what informs the dynamic. So you say, I can always tell you that in 15 years, in this hour, I'm gonna produce this many kilowatt hours. And the question is that an important hour to worry about? And that's the dynamic.
That
piece.
is the question.
Yeah,
Yes.
but the number is the number.
The number, that's right, the number is the number, but what is dynamic is
What's the value?
it
of
worth anything?
Is it worth anything at that time?
point in time, 15 years from now?
Is it worth anything at that
So
point in time?
that's what
Right.
Laura needs to help us with.
Yes, is trying to figure out how to slot in to a much more dynamic market for energy than we're
But
working.
it's safe to say that I think we kind of understand the situation.
Yeah.
We don't have the numbers, but we understand the situation. Is that, would you say we're pretty close to?
The numbers we have are good, solid energy generation for 30 years numbers. We know that. We know how much energy the thing can generate for 30 years. Every single hour, it's gonna be able to tell us, it's gonna use weather and blah, blah, and our location on the earth and all these things and say, this is how much energy you're gonna get. So that's a number, but how that then injects itself
Yeah, yeah,
into
yeah,
the energy market and values itself.
There's some artistic work that needs to.
There
go
is
on.
some art, there is some art here that we need to work on.
We need to keep Laura on our side.
I mean, the bottom line is the return, the ROI
Right.
is always gonna be a range. Because
Yes,
there's a
Right.
variable nature to the dynamic market and the value of the energy.
yes.
So when we present that as 16 years, it's 14 to 17,
or whatever.
18
Right.
years.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't tell you because of the market in which.
That's
we're
right,
contributing.
that's exactly right.
So the question is, how much effort do you want to put into to try to perfect that?
Right.
Versus just use a range and explain the range and
Right.
let it be.
Now, there's one item where you don't have to worry about that. The optimum battery ratio intuitively means it's the point where you sometimes do not meet the demand with the battery, and sometimes you have too much. And it's that balance that counts, and that's predictable. It's not.
Okay,
All right,
No,
I think,
move
I
on.
think for now, we're gonna move on,
We're
but I
good.
think somehow we're gonna need to come back to. Figure out how we inject this known quantity of energy into the market at known times and get value back for it. You know, what that
to
value is.
a known quantity into an unknown valuing.
Right.
Yeah, an unknown a market that's dynamic and we can't predict, and it's
Okay.
not easily predicted.
Good.
So let's try to skip, if we could, to CCHS. I'll share.
So we done with Laura? It's.
I think,
Well, I think
yeah.
we're respecting.
aren't we don't, or can Laura,
Laura, yeah, I think we're good.
you can go
Yeah,
take
you
care of
go.
the cat.
Yeah,
I think.
well,
you
the
guys-
piece that's,
There's a land.
there's a landfill item.
Think you guys may want to hear what I have to say about the landfill.
Yeah, we do, we
Please, yeah.
can hear.
We do, but I've made an agreement with the school committee chair that we would keep to our time at 7:40.
I'm
No,
happy to
I'm just
wait,
saying-
Dee. I'm really happy to wait.
You're okay,
Okay.
okay.
Right.
I'm
All right,
just
so
saying
let's
I'll
hear what
wait.
Laura has to say about the landfill.
I can wait for Tracy to go and then.
Oh, after you. No, you
Okay.
first.
Yeah,
It's got a
okay, you
point.
first. All right, so we have some good news about the landfill. Kearsarge met with Mass DEP and they were amenable to the slope solutions that Kearsarge presented with Weston and Sampson. And so the next step is for them to hand dig test pits on the slope to verify the as-built conditions. And Weston and Sampson, that's something they can do. And they just need to outline their schedule and procedures to the DEP and then share the results. So far, so good. The next step is to dig these test pits to verify the as-built.
Fantastic.
That's great.
That's really good news. You know, we,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we on route to expand the Kearsarge footprint, or is this simply a favor to us for enabling us to sort out our own separate town-owned project?
That remains to be seen, and I'm actually not sure what Dave has talked with you guys about in previous meetings. You know, I had shared with you that my personal opinion was that we would be financially better off if CMLP owned and operated this separate section of the landfill rather than rolling it in with Kearsarge's PPA. But Kearsarge is going to be really keen to roll it in.
I don't
So-
think Dave has shared anything.
he hasn't. All he.
I think it sounds like it's open.
Yeah.
It's an open
Part of it
question.
is
Right.
using Kearsarge.
Using
He's just been waiting for
Trying to get
Kearsarge to
that-
provide
Right.
their sort of ideas about how they would build it out.
Well, but nobody's kind of decided, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. No, but let them do the fact finding, so it supports their proposal, if they think they can do it. Then they can say, we actually proved that you could do it, and this is a value to us. If
Right,
you agree,
exactly.
go with us.
Yeah.
Great, fine, we have the number, we have the some sense of feasibility, and if we decide to go on a separate track, none of that is lost.
So we'll go hire
Yeah,
SDA
we're
to
gonna
get it
get-
sorted properly. Yeah.
Or differently, yeah,
Yeah.
all good.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
No, you're welcome.
Excellent, Laura.
Okay.
Right.
I'm looking for a PDF file here. Now, my laptop says it's gonna run out of juice. And when that happens, I will lose my connection to the Zoom, but for now.
Oh, does somebody else have an Apple
Yeah.
battery?
Apple battery.
I need a USB-C connection.
Oh, Steve's just coming with one of these.
See, we got the man here.
We need an extension cord, we need a cable.
It's a road warrior.
This guy. Exactly.
Might even be better than that. I'm gonna give you a compact. Wow.
Oh, man, you are ready.
Yeah, I'm not
You're
sure.
so ready.
Well, rock and roll.
Which is which, because is that the right one? Perhaps.
Well, into that, well, there's
I
two
got
versions.
two versions
These
of it, yeah.
days. Yeah.
Dean, does either one of those work for you to plug in?
If it's USB-C, it should be good. It's not USB-C. This is,
Right,
I'm good.
right, then just plug it into that. And see how much juice is left in it, and you should be able to keep it going. The little blue lights come on. And on the end you plug in,
Yeah,
so it's.
Oh, we're good now.
It's juicing.
it shows that I'm plugged in.
We're all good.
There
That's
you
good.
go.
Yeah.
Send me the other cable so we don't lose it. This is the client when we need it. That's it. There you go.
Fantastic.
Nothing like pre-planning. I'm a real warrior.
Now I've lost the Zoom meeting, but other than that, I'm fine.
It's still up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
still on the
that's
screen.
the-
Yeah, that's.
But that's
That's
that
laptop,
laptop,
yeah.
so I have to go rejoin it.
All right.
Oh, okay.
It's easy for me to get back to. Rejoin. I don't know why I dropped off, it's just not obvious why I dropped off, so bear with me for a second. Go back. Now, let's see if I can. Your screen, and we'll put this little UV up. Like this. Are we seeing? Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right.
this basic structure that I wrote up fundamentally starts with where we kind of are, which is we've got very preliminary ideas. The best information we have was done by the Cadmus Consulting Company. They looked at a number of places around town, but they had a big focus on the CCHS campus. They showed all the possible places that solar could go there, but they made very detailed estimates about how many panels, et cetera, could go in each individual location. And we use those as raw data when we started to think about how much energy we could generate, et cetera, et cetera. So that's our first point of entry into this conversation is we think we can do these things. These professional consultants say they should be doable. Let's look further into it. So the first thing we need the school committee to do is vote to partner with us to explore this. That's the first thing. So there's a vote that's necessary so that things can start to happen. Right now, we're just over here going, let's put some solar, and the school committee hasn't had a conversation about it, so there's been no progress. And I've tried to kind of push that rock up a hill, and I have a whole history that I wrote down of everything that I've done to try to get us in front of the school committee, and I'm not going to go through that because that's just water under the bridge at this point. But if the school committee can decide to just partner with the STF, we will start down two parallel tracks. One is pretty much on us, which is we've got to figure out siting feasibility in a more detailed manner. We have to talk to the engineering department about how the drainage area could work. We need to talk to the facility manager about the rooftop. Is there already some infrastructure that's available? There's hints that it exists, but we need very detailed technical discussions and technical feasibility to get better understandings. On the business side, the legal track over here, we just need to get down to business as to what are the basic terms? Who's going to pay? Who's going to benefit? How is it going to be built? Who's going to be responsible for maintaining it? These are just very basic terms. They don't involve lawyers. They don't involve all kinds of rigmarole, but there does have to be some agreement between the light plant and the school committee as to where these areas of responsibility will be sorted. And they're going to have to be written down in some sort of a memorandum of understanding before we start talking about legal agreements. So something where these basic business terms are understood, and the school committee has to vote to agree. The light plant will, I guess, sign off. I don't know how the light plant, maybe the light board would also vote to agree to them. I don't know, but somehow these things have to be done through committees. And then we can then call the lawyers.
I'm wondering, is one of the implications what you just said, that we need the school committee first agree to explore, and only significantly later do they want to sign on, rather than having them do what they would call buy, pay, and poke.
Well, by saying we're going to explore, we may come to a point where one of the sites burns out. It just can't be done. There's too much infrastructure. We want to put a cell phone tower. There's all kinds of things can't be done. So you say, okay, we explored that, cross off the list, not happening. But in the conversation about what are we exploring, I think we should bound the problem. Like, we're not looking at the place where you're going to put a track. We're not looking at, we're only looking at one or two places on the campus. And so it bounds the problem.
And that's what I meant by explore a particular project.
Yeah, well, we've already got them on the warrant, so.
I think the point is well taken. I think that exploration simply means we're going to work together, in a spirit of cooperation to see if we can come to agreement at the detail level.
Right.
And if we get through all the details, then we can sign off, we have a project. But I guess what this document really means is that the school committee could exit, or we could exit, basically, or the town could exit at any point in this process. And that's okay.
It's fine.
That's what the process is. We're not at the pig and the poke, but nobody wants to sell or buy pigs and pokes. So it's all, everybody,
It's a collaborative investigation to look for mutual benefits.
that's right.
And in this process, if we find that there are, impedance to that, benefit to any parties,
Right.
this is.
They can walk anytime they want up to that.
Everybody can walk.
That's right,
walk.
everybody can walk, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no commitment.
Right.
Until we get to the lady sings.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
at a certain point, we gotta put some money into this, which is professional design work, which leads to a bid package. So we'd have to be in a pretty good place with an MOU before we start going, okay, we need a bid package, so
Yeah.
that we can send that out to bid, or we know we have a good solid design, et cetera, so we'll put some money in. Now, that does professional design work, in my view, may lead to the requirement for a public process, because in the event, there are some very small trees that were put in along the edge of the around the parking lot, around the base.
Yeah.
Right now, they might be 3 inches in caliber, in diameter, they're not huge trees right now, but they could grow into large trees, and maybe we need to replace those with trees that will be a little stubbier or something, like apple
Get stump
trees.
trees.
Like little apple trees or something, I don't know, something that's,
Or there may be a,
you
But
know,
we gotta get Tracy to talk.
crab apples, she's gonna talk,
Good.
I just wanna see if what we think about the way I drew this up. I mean, this night, you know, if, has anybody got any comment on anything you want to add or to subtract, or from the way I've drawn this up?
I think you're gonna get to a point with I think there's somewhere in between. Like a preliminary MOU.
Yeah.
And then there's some design and further thought, and then a more refined one. Because I think you wanna get to a level of information that we feel confident with, and that is in concept shareable. Right,
Yep.
and that would, again, reinforce the understanding of the mutual benefit. You may need to go to then have design information and costs and other things figured out to see, but I don't know if you're gonna be able to get a full, commitment until both sides see a lot more information.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I think
It's a step process is all I'm saying.
it's a
Yeah.
step, just like an architectural
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that we all need to understand is when we get through a block of work here. That we're gonna sign that off, somehow we're gonna agree that we're done with that.
Yeah.
And when we move on to the next one, we're not gonna double back and say, oh, let's go back and redo this.
Right.
Because it's gotta flow in a linear way.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so we gotta,
You have to check in with the other parties.
if we agree on the basic business terms, and we have basic business term language, when that goes to the lawyer.
Mhm.
We're not gonna go back and start changing.
No.
Basic business terms.
Now, I'm wondering if in our discussions there's been a particular fallacy. If we're gonna build trust in exactly the process you've described, how do we create that one or more members of the school committee become part of the action?
Well, they can obviously assign a liaison member who sits in the room just like Eric does
So
often.
we'd be asking for that.
Well, we have to,
That's a great
that's
question.
a great question, we have to get through how we're gonna. I think there's how we're gonna do each of these boxes, who's the players, and we have to,
And how do we build confidence?
right.
So, Tracy, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to think about these ideas.
Well, first, I want to go back a little bit. Building trust, I think, is critical in order to create a partnership. I have watched all of your meetings, so we do not have a liaison to your group. And where the scope of the project is so large, obviously one would be necessary and should have been necessary before now. But I have watched every meeting. And I think that some things about the school committee have been a little bit mischaracterized. We're not blocking this. We very much would look to, work with you on this. I'm only speaking for myself. I cannot speak on behalf of my committee. Let me make that very clear, that this is just me speaking as one member of the committee. I do think that you've laid out a plan for us without us even having a discussion about what's happening on the campus. We have the Cadmus report. I've read it multiple times. We have read the campus advisory report. We're doing a lot of work on that because we have the amenities building article coming up. So we do look to that report significantly. And the suggestion was for solar on the roof. Listening to, I obviously know that's more expensive than the ground mount, but that was the recommendation of that committee. And I think that, I'm still stuck in now all of a sudden it's in the catch basin. I do worry about the drainage to Walden Street. There is some issues with the well that's on Walden Street. That basin is there for a reason. I don't know if, and as I said to Dean, like, we would like a design so we could have a more, I did use the word robust discussion, which I think some of you took issue with, but we do need to have a discussion about it. And how can we have a discussion when we don't know exactly what it's going to look like? We think, I've seen different iterations of plans. We need something more formal before we can have a discussion about it. So that's really what I'm looking for. Happy to put you on an agenda. I'm happy to discuss it first as a school committee, because we do need to have that discussion as a school committee. I think that some of you probably watched our discussions about the BD Center signage or the tennis scoreboard. We do discuss things at great length before we make a decision about what goes on this campus. We're still discussing the cell tower. We're still not at a point that we're ready to pull the trigger on that. I know it's not the timeline that you're probably hoping for, but we do take it seriously. I do think that area, it's not just used for nothing. There are classes that are out there. There's a pollinator garden out there. I heard in your last meeting some concerns about invasive species growing underneath the solar panels. So there are some hurdles to that area. And I think that you've laid some of those out, but I would look forward to a more kind of collaborative, trusting relationship that we could have with our committees, because I think that's the only way that things can be effective. And for right now, it just hasn't felt like that. So I'm looking forward to trying to build that. So I think that you've laid out a plan for us to do. I'm not sure it's going to go as you've laid it out. I think the first step is for the school committee to have a discussion of kind of like where we are, what's brought us to here right now. And,
What would it take to take the step you've mentioned, I think very wisely, that you have a member of the school committee join with us, attend meetings, and therefore be able to report back firsthand? What would it take to do that?
Oh, we can do, I mean, I am watching all of your meetings. And I can talk to the school committee at our next meeting and see if anybody else would like to do it, but I've watched all of your meetings. So
Big Phil's asking
wouldn't
to have a
participate.
physical body.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that we are observers on any group that we liaise with. So we don't always participate in we wouldn't necessarily sit at the table, but we would be more observers to your group and then report back to the school committee.
I think we're in a stronger position if you agree to have somebody be a full participant, be able to report back.
Well,
So
that,
that's
we
something
can
I'd
work,
have to
we
talk
can work
about.
through that. I'm not, that, we need to think about that, and I hear you, Phil, but town committee work generally doesn't have this level of cross-pollination. It has to be set up within the charge. It has this, like Gavin is a liaison member, but he was established within the charge of the committee. You can't just like pull people in and go, you're now a liaison and you're full
That's right, you
participant.
can't do that.
Can't really do that. So, I was reluctant to do this, but I'm gonna do it. And that is, I'm gonna go through the timeline that I have attempted, Tracy, to work with you guys to get something done. And so if you feel like I'm misrepresenting the case when I say that I feel we've been blocked, I'm just gonna run through this timeline. I had it all written down and I said, I'm gonna skip through that. It's water under the bridge.
Well,
I'm gonna, no, this is our committee meeting, and I'm gonna say this. On Monday, the 9th of October, I wrote a letter to the full committee saying we are interested in building on your campus. And on the 10th of October, I went to your meeting, and in a public comment period, I said, we are interested in building on your campus. And I read a statement that said what we would like to do, when I'd like to be on your agenda to be discussing this or to have the attention of the full committee. I wanted a meeting on the 24th of October and another one on the 7th of November, so you would have time to think about whether you could partner with us. That's what I said on the 10th of October. On the 12th of October, I followed up because Mr. Booth asked for further information, like, oh, this is a public comment period, which nobody really gets to have a colloquy with the committee. But Mr. Booth asked for follow-up information, and I followed up with the Kearsarge information from 2017, with the Cadmus report from 2020, and with our spreadsheet of where we've identified places that we think could take some solar. That was on October 12th. And I've stated, we want to get to the warrant so we can do something this year in those statements, okay? On the 23rd, I met with you and Alexa and Lori, okay? And in that meeting, you said, this is a little premature. We'd like to meet with the light plant. We'd like to meet with Dave. And I said, just include me in the meeting. Please include me in the meeting. I don't want to have us have too many meetings. Just get me in the meeting. I then went and met with Dave. In the next week, I met with Dave and said to Dave, please make sure I'm in the meeting. Here's what we're trying to do with the school committee. I'm working every angle I can to try to be open and transparent with you. What we want, how we can talk to you, how we can work with you. That's what I've done. Then I met with Dave on 11/1. On 11/2, I reported a lack of progress in this meeting, that we're not making progress and we want to get on the warrant with you guys, but we're not making progress. And on 11/30, I went to the sustainability meeting with Mrs. Guiney and I presented what we'd like to do. So I'm using every possible opening with anywhere in the administration, with anywhere that anyone will listen to me, to say, this is what we want to do. When you go to the select board and say, this is all a surprise to me, your finger's not really on the pulse. Okay, it's not on the pulse. Okay, so on 12/7, okay, you, Alexa, and Dr. Hunter had a meeting by phone or Zoom with Dave. I had asked both you and Dave, include me in the meetings, please. Include me in the meetings. You had a call with him. And that night, when I asked about how we doing, Dave, have you gotten a date yet with the school committee? He said, oh, I already met with them. Okay, so why do you think I have frustration? Why do you think I'm not feeling heard? Because I'm not. Okay, so
if I could just say that I did let you know that we would be meeting with Dave, so we could understand the technical nature of what you're trying to do and the capability of the light plant. So I told you that twice, that we were going to meet with Dave. You didn't like the answer, but that was the answer that I gave you. So I understand your passion for this project. We also have a lot of other things that we do as a school committee. We've been reviewing the budget. The first I saw the warrant article was in the select board packet. I had never even seen it. We're very much part of it, but I haven't even looked at anything. We haven't had a discussion. I understand you're frustrated with the timeline. We meet twice a month. There are other things on our agenda. I mean, it's just, there's nothing else I can say. This just does not feel as collaborative as I would like it to feel. We're certainly willing to work with you. We're willing to put this as a discussion on our agenda. I've told you all of this, and it's not the timeline that you want, but this doesn't feel great, the attack at a meeting. And I do think that, you know, you've presented something to your group tonight as to what the school committee has to do. So I need to have a discussion with our committee, and we will discuss what you're proposing that you'd like us to do. But I'm not sure what the answer is going to be until we have a meeting. Our next meeting's in January.
Do you understand what we're asking for, though, as a first step here? Because I don't think we're on the same page with this first step issue. I think, you know, classically, when two potential partners come together to do business, they have determined that there's some joint interest, beneficial interest for both parties. And they typically, you know, want to explore that and determine whether that interest could be turned into something more real in the way of some sort of joint venture, some sort of project, some sort of agreement, some sort of investment, whatever. But interjecting things in as requirements before we can have that discussion, I think is kind of difficult, because we would just be, taking a shot in the dark. What we want to understand is what your view of that situation is, and the extent to which you would be willing to just work it out with us, that we might, sort out a way forward, without any sort of precondition.
The discussion we've just been having, speaking with somebody who, at least in industries, had 50 years of trying to work out deals, some would succeed and some didn't, is the wrong field. And unless we find a way, and I don't care what way, of working directly together before any deal is made, this is going nowhere, and that's not what anybody wants. So how do we actually work jointly to arrive at a process rather than unilaterally, which is what I've been hearing, and I don't care which side you're on.
Well, and I think that's exactly it. We shouldn't be sides. We are one town. We are one community working together to make our community better. Sustainability is obviously one of our goals as a town. But I do think that,
We start working together rather than pointing fingers at each other.
I agree. But I think the first step is the school committee has to have a discussion, and we will have a discussion at our January meeting.
So Tracy, what can we do for that meeting? I assume that you'd want representation from STF there. So what would you need from us for that meeting? Because I think we really sincerely do want to partner. We don't know how to. I think we're a little, which is not clear. So I don't know if it would help to even have.
Well, I think, I do think that, yep, I think that I've seen, I mean, the first step would be, what exactly are you looking for in that drainage basin, and what exactly you're looking for on the roof? I mean, there are multiple drawings, there are multiple suggestions of what it's going to be. Will there be tree removal? Will there not be? I mean, how can we agree to partner when we're not even sure what the project looks like?
Because we don't know.
We don't know.
Wait, we don't know what the project looks like
Right?
until we agree. This is like a chicken or an egg thing. Until we agree that this is worth pursuing together, it's hard to go off and start making investments in designs. Because, this is a collaborative process. I mean, there is no way to do.
And at
I
least
don't quite know how to
as I
say
see
it.
it,
I mean,
the cooperation should be starting now.
let me try this. At a base level, I think what we've said is that what we want to do is we want to be able to match what Cadmus basically proposed. And I think we would be happy with simply executing on the Cadmus design if the school committee were amenable. But we don't know whether the Cadmus design is something that you're interested in. We don't know that. But it's all we have, and it's what we based all of our thinking on. Gee, Cadmus already did this. We have a straw man. That should be good enough for, I think, for you guys to decide, hey, do we want to pursue this? And then further, well, no, well then, and then, and if we want to pursue it, that's a first step. We want to pursue it, and then we just peel it apart, and we decide whether this is really the right way to do it, or whether we want to do it somewhat differently. And if we want to do it somewhat differently, do we want to start spending some money? And I'm not saying your money, but do we want to start spending some money? Are we ready to invest in having someone look at some alternative layouts for that area that you could then examine and get a feel for and decide whether those made sense or not? But at a first order of magnitude, I mean, we already have what we have. We have a design that the town already paid for.
But I think, Charlie, you're making the assumption that Cadmus is acceptable to us, but hasn't asked anyone whether it's acceptable to anybody else. So the first question, really more basic, is the school committee has an interest in sustainability. there is an option to do some solar to support your overall long-term goals. What interest do you have in solar on the campus? And what opinions, if you formed any, about how it might be implemented? Or would you like to investigate with us options for some implementation of solar on the campus? Not necessarily saying Katniss is it. That was one shot in time, maximize what we can do on this site. But on the more basic question is the school committee interested in doing solar on the campus?
But don't skip past the Cadmus thing.
But you can't
because
take it for granted.
I'm not taking it for granted.
Yeah.
But I'm just responding to
Yeah.
what Tracy said about they don't know what we want. Well, we have something
Right.
that is as close to what we want as we can get without
We need
spending
a
money,
straw man.
without spending more money.
I understand.
And so we have a straw man.
Right.
And I think we're willing to, as a committee, agree to pursue money to do, a more fine-tuned plan that reflects the, the wishes of the school committee. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?
Right.
But we shouldn't say that we don't have anything.
No, I'm not saying you have something.
We have what we have,
We have what you have,
right?
but the question is, that's one option.
Right, it's not set in stone.
There's 20 others.
Yeah, but they want to go to the school committee and have a discussion, and then the complaint is that they don't have anything that shows what we want. Well, we have something that shows,
We have a straw.
we
man.
have,
Right.
we have a straw man of what is wanted based on something that we already paid a lot of money for.
Right.
So, I don't know exactly how they went about doing the Canvas stuff.
Right.
And probably none of us were around when it was done, but,
Right.
and that's just, they took a shot in the dark and they laid some stuff out, and maybe it's right, maybe it's not right, but it's something.
Right,
And that's as good a place to get started, I think, as any.
right, but I think you're putting that forward and you're potentially forcing a yes or no.
No, I'm not.
No, we just.
No, not at all. I'm
We
not
just
forcing it at
wanna,
all.
we wanna join.
I'm responding to the
Different.
question about, you don't have anything that shows what you want.
Right.
And I'm saying, well, we have what we have, it's better than nothing, and it's something we already paid for, and it shows. A certain number of megawatts on that field laid out in a certain way,
Mhm.
and that would be a good place to get started.
Right.
Not asking anybody to say yes or no to anything. It's just,
Right. So what is their opinion on the Katniss the previous work done on solar on the site? And is there any appetite for pursuing that at this time? Or something like it?
Plus, just on the other side, I'd love to hear more about the campus advisory
Yeah.
report, because I never heard it.
there's a whole.
No, I know, but I'm asking, it would be helpful for the school committee to present their perspective on that, because I thought that.
Share
If
with us
solar is
if there's
important, then we should
some
start
part of it.
someplace where we have a mutual interest.
Right.
Well, there were
We all- it's all
lots of comments laced through there on solar. I think you probably read it.
And I don't think I've seen
I
it,
haven't
not
seen it,
a
yeah.
campus study.
So
It's not, I'm happy to forward it to you. It is on our website and it is a group that was back in 2017 or 2018. And so what we have done in improvements to the high school is you saw that we did the lighting and paving over the summer. So we're still knocking things off of that committee.
Yeah.
Because it was a committee that met extensively. And it was the lighting and the paving, the amenities building is also in there. The track is kind of what I guess they called like not a nice to have, but like that would be something that we're gonna look to private donation for and not to the taxpayer. Because I think we do need to be cognizant of that. And I did have some questions also on where does the light board stand on this? Like that would be important for us to know as a school committee. What is the cost gonna be to the ratepayer? I get that it's not gonna be a tax cost, but what is the cost gonna be to the ratepayer for this project? So those are some things that have come up. I'm sure that my committee members have other questions that we can certainly come up with. We can send them to you ahead of time if you like. But I do think, the starting point for us, it was that campus advisory committee work, and their recommendation was solar on the roof. So it was solar on the roof. It says it wasn't possible to do in the basin. So I think we do need to investigate what is even possible to do in there. And natural resources might be involved in that. There may be some other parties involved besides the school committee to see if it's even feasible.
I think it said, solar, in the basin or in that area between the two buildings, but there were issues. I think there were issues
issues.
having to do with the light plant, were there not?
There were issues that,
And there were
light
issues-
plant,
and there were-
unknown costs,
Yeah,
unknown.
there were a whole series of things that never were answered satisfactorily and were never resolved in that document. It was like, well, there are technical difficulties. There are this.
So do you have those
So-
answers from the light plant? Would you have those answers from the light plant that you could produce those also?
Pardon me?
Were any open questions in that report that you're saying were open questions? Her question is, given that time has passed and we've done more research, is it possible for this committee or the light plan to answer some of those questions? So that the thoughts in that report can move forward with a little more confidence?
Yeah, I think
They're
we've
solvable.
answered the questions. Would you say, Dean, that we've
Yes.
answered all the
Yeah.
questions?
Okay, okay,
In the
so,
report.
yeah.
I think for the committee would need to, like my committee would be interested in those questions, those answers.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time as a committee going over the issues that that previously were articulated by the light plant, which basically said, we can't put any more solar on this part of town, we can't put solar on Beatty, we can't put solar at the high school because of the fact that the grid can't handle the extra generation.
So,
I
So
didn't know that was-
well, I'm saying, we got through all of the technical issues. We did it in great detail in here. And I think if you watched all those meetings, you probably heard us go through that with Dave, which was, do we have an issue with implementing solar in this specific location?
Yes.
And we went through every permutation and combination of that question. And the answer came up, no,
Yeah,
it's good to, you're good to go.
And those,
Maybe it's in our minutes too.
and frankly, those were all.
Well, it's in the minutes. So,
Frankly, those were all resolved before I even did outreach on October 9th. We had
See, we-
resolved whether we can do solar on the
yeah,
campus.
so we wouldn't have selected CMS or CCHS as a potential site if we hadn't done that
Right.
work. So we did that work, and now it comes down to, we've also done a lot of modeling to determine whether there's an impact on ratepayers, and we have a lot of material. What we don't have is the specifics around whether you want to do this in the first place, but whether how these arrays might be arranged differently than what Cadmus had to say, and how do you feel about the site, and all this kind of stuff, pollinator gardens, and you name it. So all this kind of stuff, these things are important to you, and I understand that, and I think they should be. So.
Well, I do think one thing, and I will only speak for myself, but the classroom usage outside, that's also an important consideration.
Mhm.
When I read the
What
Cadmus
was it?
report,
Classroom educational involvement.
Oh, yeah.
when I read the Cadmus report, it talked about tree removal. We would need to see which trees need to be removed, how will it be sited. Some of the siting, it goes, parallel, some of the siting it goes the other way. Like, I'm confused as to what it's gonna look like. So I do think there needs to be clarity to the school committee of what exactly you're looking for. I mean, we talked about a BD sign for, a few meetings, and we ended up not putting it on the campus.
Well, it's confusing. It's confusing because it's extremely preliminary. And we
I
haven't had an
understand.
opportunity to engage, to do the refinements that would get it into a form that would be meaningful to school committee and to the school administration, the students, and so forth.
So,
So it's just
But-
extremely preliminary.
all right, so I'm gonna just take some privilege here and say that we've kind of gone off the track of coming up with a process. We're not talking about coming up with a process anymore. We're off the agenda item. And I don't see us making a whole lot of progress this evening. Our liaison member from the select board would like to, she has her hand up. I'm gonna recognize her, and then I'm gonna kind of close out this discussion, and we'll try to circle back. So, Mary, go ahead.
Thank you, Dean. This has been a great discussion. I mean, it's always good, I think, to clear the air. What I'm hearing is that this particular committee wants to enter into an agreement that says, yes, we want to work together to explore the solar at the CCH property. The school committee is interested in, they're stewards of that property, and they're also interested in the educational impact this would be. Other things that they're interested in, such as impact on ratepayer, I think that's really up to town meeting to decide. That's not up to the school committee. to decide that. It's also up to the town to decide what would be the impact on drainage. So I think these things might come out if you put together, drafted a memo of understanding, saying we would like to work together. The school committee is going to worry about these things. The task force is going to be interested in some of the technical issues, and see if we can get past that so that we can at least something in writing as far as what are each of your roles, so that we can then move forward. Because I really think at the end of the day, this is a win-win for everybody. We kind of got off to a rocky start here, but I do think that the school has a stewardess responsibility for that property and an educational interest. And as I said, other interests, I mean, some of the things you talked about, Tracy, I think are kind of outside the purview of the school committee. And this board simply wants to, this task force, they're impatient because they've been working at this for years. The town's impatient because we've been asking at town meeting, unanimously voting to put solar on municipal land. So we're impatient as well. So because we want to get this off the ground. So if we could, I would hope that we could recommend some kind of a draft of a memo of understanding to put in front of the school committee. And
That's a very interesting idea, because we can play the ping pong game back and forth literally forever. And what you're proposing is a new way, I think has great merit.
it's my best idea, because I'd like to see, I really do believe that this could be a win-win for everybody. It could be a win for the town. The town wants solar on municipal property. That has been voted unanimously in 2 subsequent town meetings. And I believe that the school wants this. This is a learning opportunity. This is a way for them to use their land in a way that is, aligns with the town goals and their goals. So this could be a win-win. We just got to get started. And I think an MOU that highlights people's concerns might be the way to start. It's my best idea, because I hear 2 people working really hard to try to come to an agreement.
Well, and
But-
actually, Mary, we did talk about an MOU because MOUs would be necessary for any of this. So we
Yeah.
did talk about that. David and
Okay.
I discussed that way back. So I do think the school committee will put this on a discussion, but this is, for the school committee to discuss first and to see kind of where we're at and our thoughts on the campus. We've had a lot of discussion on the campus this year. That is one of our goals, is the CCHS campus. That is part of our school committee goals. And how we run our meetings is we work towards our goals. We look at our strategic plan, we look at our school committee goals, and that's what our meetings are based around. And I completely understand the passion for this. I understand that everybody wants this. We want to be collaborative in nature. I don't want anyone to have the impression that we're not. We're just, I think we're on 2 different timelines here. And I understand that's frustrating for the solar task force. We are doing our best. We have a lot of other things that we're working on too. And I just think that there's a way that committees can work together and not be divided. I think that the town needs to, I live in this town too, we all need to work together for the good of the town. That is what part of being in a community is. So, my next step, we will have, and we briefly touched on our last meeting, we will have a solar discussion in the new year. And no, it didn't happen in October, but the solar task force started their work in August. This has been a very short timeline. So understand from my perspective how it might feel. And I would just say that, I have a lot of respect for every committee in this town. And we all do a lot of work that we are certainly not paid for, as we all know. And it's a passion project of all of ours to do this work for the town. And, we're doing good work, but I think we need to work together. That's the only thing, anything's going to happen. So just let's be transparent and let's have some discussions and see where the school committee's at. I will not speak on behalf of the school committee. I can just bring the messages back, but I do think that I've watched a lot of meetings in the past, I'd say 5 days, and it was a little enlightening and uncomfortable. So let's just try and move forward in a respecting each other in a public way, because I think that is our responsibility.
What I haven't heard yet, and would love to hear you say that's a good starting point, is what would happen if we designated, say, two people from the school committee and ourselves to sit down and do what was just suggested, create a memorandum outlining who should be doing what, how do we move ahead with the process? And then
That would be
come back
something,
to the
yeah.
School committee, sorry?
That would be something that we would have to discuss as a committee first. I can't make that decision. The committee would have to decide that.
And how soon could it do it?
Our first meeting in January is, I think, January 9th.
Would you be
I'll have to double
comfortable
check that.
proposing some such arrangement in early January so we could move ahead together?
Well, we'll have, our first step is the school committee will have a discussion.
I think, you
It
know,
will be discussion, and then we'll decide how we'd like to move forward.
Would you be interested in proposing a first joint step? Or is that not something?
Yeah, I will bring all this information back to the school committee, and we'll have a discussion together, and we will decide together how we're gonna move forward. But yes, I will bring all of that
I
to
think
the
that's the best
committee.
we're gonna get, Phil.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I can't
Tracy,
decide for the
no,
committee.
Tracy, thank you. You've
Yeah.
agreed to put us on your agenda, which has been something I've been looking for since October 9th.
Exactly.
So.
Well, Dean, I've
It's all
agreed to
in.
have, I've agreed to have a discussion with the school committee about all of this on January 9th. Let me just be clear that our first step is for the school committee to have a discussion about all of this on January 9th.
That.
not with us.
Not with us, but that's fine with me. I want the school committee to engage with the question of solar. And once it engages, I am confident that we will all move forward together. So,
And I guess, Tracy, are you clear on all the things that? Is there anything we can answer for you? Because it sounds like there was some misunderstanding of things that can't be done, but it's very clear that with the light plants support, and I'm sure Dave told you this, that it is possible to put solar there. There's not a infrastructure limitation because he's given us the green light,
yes,
right?
yes.
Just so you're clear.
Yeah, so I'm clear on that, but I do think that, something came up today about the Natural Resources Commission. Have they been involved in any of it because of the area or no?
It's not a protected area that the Natural Resources Commission has any authority over.
Okay,
There you go.
so I just need to get a little clarity on our end.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it,
And I
it's
just
not. a
encourage you
wetland.
to just outreach to Dean with any open questions
We wanna
before your
find
meeting,
input to that.
if there's open questions, that's all.
We're not invited.
Yeah.
No, but written is, but.
Whatever you might, I don't know.
If the master plan raised questions or left open issues,
Right,
then
we should,
we could send them a letter saying this is in support of resolving some of the open issues from this previous report or master plan
yeah, I love
for
this.
your interest.
Right.
And leave it at that. Let them
I mean, yeah.
be informed, a little bit more informed before they have the conversation. That's it.
Can we as a committee, Tracy, I don't know what's in that master report, but if there's something specific to the solar, is there a section
There
that
is.
says?
There
I can-
is.
I can update
There's
you.
something.
I know.
Actually,
I know it.
we have that report. You don't have to mail it to us. We have
We
it.
have it. It's
Okay.
available. We know where it is.
We have
We
all
know
that
where to
stuff.
find it. It's fine.
Because maybe we should just voluntarily correct what's not right in there.
Right.
Or if there's
They-
something
Update it, just.
Yeah. The main misinformation in that report
Yeah.
was that the light plant cannot put solar on this site, period.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we have to wait for the light plant to fix itself so that solar can arrive on the site.
We worked through that.
This is the
And
most-
that we have already
And
identified.
I think
as
it was
a-
also indicated that it was desirable to go on that site.
Right.
Well, I know the routes, right? So-
No, to go on that site in between the two
Oh,
areas.
really? Oh,
Yeah, I believe it was.
Oh.
And
I haven't
I-
seen this. All right. I'll-
Not in the advisory report. I don't
Not-
believe.
Anyway, no, let's just
Okay.
leave that,
Okay.
we'll leave that.
Okay.
So the school committee will discuss, their posture towards solar. That's your internal discussion, but I'm just happy that that's happening. That just makes me happy that you guys are gonna talk about solar. So I think that's a great first step, because between now and town meeting, I'd really like us to be able to move forward together. That's the whole goal here, is by the time we arrive at town meeting, we have some partnership that we can stand up together and say, we want to do this on the campus. I'm not saying what it is, I'm not saying,
We
you
wanna
know,
do
what the
something.
scale of it, we want to do this on the campus. By the time we end up at town meeting, that's where we are. That's really the goal here.
If the town meeting is successful, it means that school committee, the power plant, and ourselves jointly present something that they believe is good for the town. Anything short of that is a waste of everybody's effort.
In the article, is this coming from the solar task force? It's the solar task force is moving who's moving the article?
Well, the solar task force will be moving the article, and the article is really to create bonding authority so that the light plant has the financial capacity to build a set of things that we think it should build. So it's really a bonding article, which puts the light plant, we only get one bite at the apple each year. Otherwise, another year is burned waiting for the next town meeting. So we felt we needed to put a bunch of eggs in this basket. Now, when we arrive at town meeting, if we decide that we don't want a battery or that we can't do the landfill, even though we got very positive feedback tonight, we'll excise whatever item and we will just go and ask town meeting only for the things we think we're gonna do. We're not gonna just say, let's get a pot of money and just randomly spend it. It's gonna have a foundation that can be defended. So right now, we think we can defend all of the stuff that's in there. And we think it could be built.
Furthermore, we're not gonna make you do anything.
We're not gonna make you do it.
You don't have to do anything. You could walk away from this thing right now and we'll just spike it and we'll pull it out of the article.
But
You know, if that's what you wanna do,
Yeah.
I mean, just say it.
Yeah,
Just go meet us at school committee and
Right.
say that you don't wanna do solar on that site and you wanna pull that back and it's over. And we'll pull it out. I think is that,
yeah, and I think that's fair.
that's fair.
We're trying to take we took the highest scale that we could possibly manage and put it all in the article. And if we have to pull pieces, we'll pull them. It's not, I don't see any problem with that. There's no problem with that
You
at
know,
all.
I guess Tracy, the other thing, the task force actually has a report to write.
Yeah,
So even if we don't do this now, we're looking at all kinds of property.
Yeah,
So
right.
there's another opportunity in the future.
Right.
If it's not now, it might be later,
Right.
so.
The other thing I would say is that my view of the project at CCHS is that it's very, very straightforward. Fairly simple project. What's not simple is how you all feel about it. But from a technical point of view and from a financial point of view, from an energy point of view, we know pretty much 90% of what we need to know. Design wise, yeah, the panels can be moved around and the amount of panels could be smaller, they could be larger. How high are they gonna be? I mean, there's all kind of questions like that. But it could be,
Well, and I did hear
all
at your
kinds
last
of different
meeting,
combinations, but it's pretty straightforward.
someone did mention the radiation coming from the solar panel at one of your last meetings. And, we have a lot of people that comment to us about, cell phone tower and things like that. So we will get feedback on whatever someone's thinking, but I heard someone say something like that at your last meeting. I was like, interesting.
It was solar reflection, not radiation.
Oh, the
It was
reflection. I
it
thought
was the
she said
glare coming off the
radiation.
light.
Oh, the
Yeah.
glare. Oh, I
glare.
thought she said radiation. I was like,
No, no.
But I mean,
No, it's the glare from the glass on the solar panels. Some people
oh,
have
okay,
concerns for it.
okay. The audio
So-
was not great then.
so thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of projects have been done on properties like this and on roofs like this. And this is extremely well known how to go about these things. So we just hope we get in line with best practices, and we really want to make your life easy too, because your life shouldn't be complicated with a bunch of stuff like, gee, what's the impact on ratepayers and so forth. So we can help you get around some of that.
Okay, well, people always have questions. I have questions as a resident. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll just see how it goes. So we'll put this on our agenda for our January meeting and we'll get back to you.
thank you.
Okay.
All right, now we've blown past all of our.
But what time is it? It's 8:30?
8:30.
Okay, 8:30.
It's 8:30. We're sort of done, but I don't want to skip item 7, secondary item 7, we can skip, because I don't think we have any new business, which is due. 7 and 7, but grid resiliency innovation partnerships. Here's how I want to have us think about that, and we need to be chop fast about something. I don't know how we're going to pull this together. I just don't know, because we don't have a lot of time or meetings. We have one meeting on the 4th of January, I think, and then it's due. You know, it's due on the 12th. So I think we could come up with what I would appreciate it if everybody would send me is an idea of a unified problem that will take resources on the grid for us to solve a problem that we can solve with it needs to be a well-defined thing. And if it takes this, that, and that, and that to solve, that's fine, because that's what this program is for. But I just don't think we would succeed if we just said, here's a catch bag of things that we would like to do to our local municipal power plant. We want 5 batteries over here. We want some new school buses, and let's do an islanding thing for the public safety building so it can go offline and still have power. And if we just throw everything in it's not going to fly. It's got to be a
use case.
defined use case that we are trying to solve. And if it takes a bunch of stuff to solve the use case, that's fine. But I don't want to.
You can't shotgun the problems. You
Right.
have to have a defined, understandable problem.
Right.
So that it can be sourced and.
Right. So
We need a world that our grandchildren can thrive in. It's that simple.
that's a great start.
Yeah.
But if you read like the 3rd one on the list I sent out,
Yeah.
that's a small muni or something like that, I think. I don't know what it is actually, but they have a solar saturation problem. And so they came up with an acronym and they say, we're going to build the blah, blah system with this acronym.
Right.
But it's basically to solve solar saturation. So what is that going to take? It's going to take some batteries, it's going to take some solar, it's going to take some this. Well-defined problem.
Okay,
Give
we'll
us,
send it up to
give us
you.
some money.
Yeah.
Send me some ideas about well-defined problems that we can solve. And Laura, if you got some that you want the light plant to solve, you're in the mix. Send it.
So basically, any
'Cause-
problem that I have, I can send to you and you're gonna fix it?
Well, we're
Wait,
gonna,
wait,
we're
we're not
not
gonna
gonna fix it. We're gonna send in a grant proposal so that the federal government will fund the fix. How about that?
Yeah.
So you
Well,
got,
I'd love an island, but we certainly can't do it with the existing police station because it's in the flood zone.
There you go.
What, which one?
an island, the island, she's making a play on words. We can't have an island, it's in a flood zone.
Right, yeah.
All right, good.
All right.
So really, if there's something that a problem space that you and the light plan have been kind of like noodling on, send it to us and we'll see if we can work it up as a grant proposal. I mean, there's no harm in throwing something over the wall, and all they're looking for by January 12th is just a preliminary, like, blur.
Is it just a blur?
Well, I don't know how big a blur, but it's not a final proposal.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
maybe,
we could get together and work this out together and post a meeting and just get together.
we can post a meeting.
I would think that would be a better way to do
I'll
it.
think about that.
Yeah.
Think
There's
about
some, like, already looking at this stuff, like, I don't know.
No,
if this came
I don't
from-
think
that.
so.
No,
No
No.
one's looking at these kind of opportunities,
no.
even. like, in this meeting.
Well, I sent this out to a bunch of people
Yeah.
a month ago.
Oh, really?
No, Eric's not looking at it.
Crickets.
Yeah.
The crickets, I haven't gotten
Okay,
anything.
we got,
So,
Okay.
okay,
you got guests.
Yeah.
Right.
You got
what,
people up there.
Any
Public comments.
public comment?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you better do public
It's on the
comments.
agenda.
There's no public. Oh, okay, there is a public. There's one person from the public. Would the public like to comment?
Or,
This is Court Booth, 144 Wright Road, school committee member, not speaking for the school committee. And actually, I don't have anything particular to add other than, thank you for your efforts to bring the two groups together. I think, Dean, you and Tracy have moved the ball forward in a helpful way. Thank you.
Thanks, Court.
Yep.
Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
I second.
Okay,
Third.
Aye.
we're out.